International. It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, the genocidal campaign carried out by the Israeli occupation against defenseless Palestinians is continuing for the 34th consecutive day, in which over 10,600 people, mainly children, have been massacred. Palestinian Foreign Affairs Minister Riyad al-Maliki has sent an urgent letter to the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, to address statements issued by the Israeli occupation to nuke the Gaza Strip. The Algerian National Committee for Solidarity with the Sahrawi people has lodged a complaint with the International Criminal Court against the Zionist regime for genocide and war crimes against the Palestinian people. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Smani. In the besieged city of Gaza, the Zionist army warplanes targeted at dawn today the area around the Shifa hospital. According to the Palestinian news agency, the occupation warplanes fired several missiles near the Shifa hospital. The agency explained that fragments of rockets fell into the hospital's courtyard. The same source added that warplanes of the Zionist army also bombed the area around Al-Nasser hospital in the west of the besieged enclave. 3 Palestinian citizens were martyred and dozens were injured. The media also reported a Zionist artillery bombardment targeting the east of the town of Rafah. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric described the dire situation in the Gaza Strip.
Our humanitarian colleagues are warning about the increasingly dire situation of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza City and other areas north of Gaza as armed clashes and intense bombardments continue. As of yesterday, no bakeries were active in the north due to the lack of fuel, water, and wheat flour, as well as sustained damage to the bakeries themselves. Food security partners have been unable to deliver assistance in the north for the past 7 days. Still in the north of Gaza, hospitals sheltering tens of thousands of displaced men, women, and children continue to experience attacks taking place in close proximity to those facilities. The World Health Organization says that due to the lack of medical supplies, doctors have to conduct complex surgeries, including amputations, without anesthesia.
New appeals have been launched for the delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza, victim of an unprecedented attack and aggression by the Israeli occupation, which has been subjected to relentless bombardments for more than a month, in parallel with an ongoing campaign of repression in the West Bank. The Palestinian Ministry of Health has announced that the number of Palestinian martyrs has risen to 10,678 and that of the wounded to around 28,500. Among the martyrs were 4,324 children, 2,823 elderly people, and 2,550 people reported missing. Said Bouazi reports.
18 hospitals out of a total of 35 have been closed as a result of the Zionist strikes and the lack of fuel. The Palestinian Ministry of Health pointed out that doctors are still obliged to carry out operations without anesthetic, including on those injured in the bombardments and women giving birth by caesarean section. Faced with this critical situation, the foreign ministers of the G7 meeting in Tokyo on Wednesday called for the establishment of humanitarian pauses and corridors in the Gaza Strip, notably to enable the urgent delivery of humanitarian aid to the Palestinian territory and the evacuation of civilians threatened by the series of continuous Zionist raids since 7th October. For their part, the UN humanitarian agencies have launched a new appeal for access to the Gaza Strip. Every day you think it's the worst day, but the next day is worse, said the spokesman for the World Health Organization, Christian Lindmeier, deploring the number of deaths and the level of suffering, adding that an average of 160 children are martyred every day in the besieged Palestinian enclave. The UN Secretary-General's spokesman Stéphane Dujarric said that the Secretary-General remains extremely distressed by the killings of civilians in the Gaza Strip and the humanitarian catastrophe now unfolding in the territory. In this context, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, said that more than 2 out of 3 Gazawis have been displaced in the space of a month, bringing the total to nearly 1.5 million people facing inhumane living conditions. In addition, more than 717,000 Palestinians have taken refuge in 149 UNRWA facilities across the enclave, including in the north, which has been cut off from the rest of the Gaza Strip by the Zionist occupation army.
Speaking about the humanitarian aid delivered via the Rafah crossing point, UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric said,
Aid continues to enter Gaza from Egypt through the Rafah crossing. And whoever has that bell, I don't know whose that is, if you could, thank you.
Well, the Palestinian Prisoners Club has announced that the number of detainees in the occupied West Bank has risen to more than 2,280 Palestinians since the 7th of October, and that the arrests have been accompanied by systematic acts of abuse against the detainees and their families. According to media reports, arrests are made by searching Palestinian homes during the night until dawn, and the detainees are transferred to temporary detention centers before being directed to the main investigation centers of prisons. The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs denounced the violations committed by the Israeli occupation and prison administration against Palestinian prisoners languished in the jails of the apartheid Israel, as well as the escalation of targeting, torture, and harassment against them. Meanwhile, a French lawyer has announced that he has addressed a communication to the International Criminal Court on behalf of 3 Palestinian NGOs to denounce, among other things, war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by the Zionist occupation army in the Gaza Strip. Facts denounced by Al-Haq, the Al-Mazin Center, and the Palestinian Center for Human Rights are genocidal intent, incitement to genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, according to the communication sent to the ICC prosecutor on Wednesday evening. The ICC is also asked to issue arrest warrants against those most responsible in these crimes, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Their lawyer, Emmanuel Daoud, said the NGOs want Zionist officials who are conducting with impunity a war in which war crimes and crimes against humanity are committed every day, to understand that they will have to answer personally for their actions before international justice. As you followed in our top stories, Palestinian Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates Riyad Al-Maliki has sent an urgent letter to the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Mariano Grossi, to address statements made by the Israeli occupation to nuke the Gaza Strip. Said Bouazi has the details.
The Palestinian Minister of Foreign Affairs said that a statement discussing the possibility of dropping a nuclear bomb on the Gaza Strip to destroy it and commit genocide against the Palestinian people are completely consistent with the prevailing discourse in apartheid Israel and constitute an official recognition of possessing nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction. Al-Maliki underlined that the occupying power has illegally developed nuclear weapons, refused to join the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and refused to submit to any monitoring or safeguard systems. He said that the colonizer is now working to fuel the conflict and deepen its occupation through this threat to use nuclear weapons against the Palestinian people in Gaza. In this respect, the minister recalled that the threat to use nuclear weapons against one country is a threat to all countries. Therefore, this requires immediate and urgent attention from the IAEA and member states. He also called on the IAEA and all member states to condemn the Israeli threats and to take all measures available at their disposal to neutralize this clear threat to the right of the Palestinian people and the surrounding countries to life.
People across the world have rallied in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza, condemning the high rate of civilian casualties in deadly Israeli attacks and calling for an immediate ceasefire. Demonstrations on Wednesday were held across major cities including New York, Cape Town, Damascus, Rome, Karachi, and elsewhere. The Israeli occupation attacks continue to pound the already destroyed parts of the Gaza Strip, especially Gaza City and its surrounding densely populated neighborhood of Shujaia. The continuous Zionist attacks on the besieged Gaza Strip have led to widespread killings of the Palestinian population, displacement, and a huge humanitarian crisis. Meanwhile, more than 100 employees of the U.S. Congress have called on U.S. President Joe Biden to take immediate action to prevent further innocent civilian casualties in the Gaza Strip, which has been the scene of a barbaric Zionist aggression for 34 days, the WAFA news agency reported today. According to WAFA, in a letter that they submitted to President Biden and read before Congress, the employees said that the death toll in Gaza requires immediate action to prevent further loss of civilian life, underlining that the conflict cannot be resolved by military means. The signatories laid flowers in memory of the martyrs who fell during the Zionist aggression against the Gaza Strip, according to the same source. Meanwhile, the United Nations organization has recorded the deaths of 99 humanitarian workers since the start of the Israeli bloody attack on Gaza on the 7th of October, the highest number in the organization's history, U.S. spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said.
As an example of the difficulties encountered by our colleagues working in Gaza yesterday, a convoy of 5 UNRWA and WHO trucks escorted by 2 vehicles from the International Committee of the Red Cross came under fire as they were on their way to deliver life-saving medical supplies to the Shifa hospitals, Al-Quds Hospital in Gaza City. 2 trucks were damaged and one of the drivers was injured. The convoy ultimately reached Shifa Hospital where it delivered medical supplies. As of now, 99 of our colleagues from UNRWA have been killed during this conflict.
The UN said on its website, in addition, at least 26 people were injured in the clashes between the two sides. The latest 2 deaths were confirmed yesterday after a projectile fell in the courtyard of a school in Khan Yunis, a town in the south of the Gaza Strip. The site is home to more than 5,000 internally displaced people. Nearly 1.5 million people have been displaced in the Gaza Strip since the beginning of the aggression. The 151 UNRWA facilities are home to 730,000 people who have fled their homes. Here in Algiers, or in Algeria, the Embassy of the State of Palestine in Algiers has warmly hailed in a statement the appeal by the President of the Republic to all free men of the world, Arab jurists and human rights organizations to take legal action before the International Criminal Court against the Zionist entity for its crimes against the Palestinian people. In a press release, the Embassy of the State of Palestine in Algiers expressed its sincere thanks to the President of the Republic for his strong stance in support of the Palestinian cause in the face of the genocidal war and forced displacement to which the Palestinian people have been subjected for over a month amid the inertia, indifference, and passivity of the international community. The Embassy of the State of Palestine in Algiers also called on the free and civilized world to adopt a similar position in support of the rights of the Palestinian people and the values of justice, morality, and humanity, the statement concluded. As you followed in our top stories, the Algerian National Committee for Solidarity with the Sahrawi People has joined the signatories of the complaint which is be lodged today with the International Criminal Court against the Zionist entity for genocide and war crimes against the Palestinian people. The case has been entrusted to the lawyer of Lianbar Front, a lawyer of the Polisario Front, and a determined activist in favor of the Palestinian and Sahrawi causes, alongside a group of several other lawyers, the text read. The initiative reinforces the appeal made on Monday by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, to all free men of the world, Arab jurists and international human rights bodies and organizations to take legal action before the ICC and international human rights organizations against the Zionist entity. In other news, Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman chaired a government meeting on Wednesday devoted to the mining and finance sectors. In the area of mining, the government examined in second reading a preliminary draft law governing mining activities presented by the Minister of Energy and Mines. This new version of the draft text has been enriched and completed, taking into account the guidelines formulated at the government meeting of the 31st of May 2023. The aim of this draft bill is to create an appropriate and encouraging legal environment to encourage the development of the mining industry. It establishes an incentive framework for investors while placing a strong emphasis on local job creation. In the area of finance, the Minister of Finance presented 4 draft executive decrees to implement the provisions of Law 2307 of the 21st of June 2023 relating to the rules of public accounting and financial management. In addition, the Finance Minister presented a communication on the state of progress of the process of opening up the capital of the 2 public banks, the Popular Credit of Algeria and the Local Development Bank, by listing them in the stock exchange in line with the government's action plan. In the Western Sahara file, dozens of Sahrawi students in Europe have called for the immediate release of Sahrawi political detainees arbitrarily imprisoned by the Moroccan occupation authorities, calling on the international community to sanction Morocco for its repeated and deliberate human rights violations against the Sahrawi people. More with Said Bouazi.
During a sit-in organized in Madrid in front of the Spanish Foreign Affairs Ministry on the occasion of the National Day of the Sahrawi Civilian Prisoner, commemorated on 8th November each year, Sahrawi students, joined by a number of foreign students and supporters of the Sahrawi cause, also called for respect for the rights of Sahrawi prisoners, including the right to a fair trial, an end to arbitrary detention, protection against torture and ill treatment, as well as the imperative of granting international human rights organizations access to Moroccan prisons and investigating the conditions of Sahrawi detainees. In a statement to APS, Mustafa Abdelbari, a Sahrawi student in France and one of the initiators of this action, deplored the lack of denouncing violations of the rights of Sahrawi political detainees in Moroccan jails by international human rights organizations. In this connection, he pointed out that Sahrawi students are constantly writing to the United Nations and other international organizations to raise awareness to the violations of the rights of Sahrawi political detainees, organizing demonstrations and conferences on the subject, and contacting the media and NGOs defending the Sahrawi cause. According to the Sahrawi activist, it is high time for the international community to severely sanction Morocco and call it to order. The date of 8 November was chosen because of the events that took place on 8 November 2010, when the Moroccan occupying forces savagely dismantled the Gdeymizi camp, which comprised around 6,500 tents set up by the Sahrawis a month earlier to protest against the poor socio-economic conditions in Western Sahara, occupied by Morocco since 1975.
The Minister of National Education, Chairman of the National Commission of Education, Science and Culture at the UNESCO, Abdelhakim Belabed, met with his counterpart, the Director General of UNESCO, on the sidelines of the 42nd session of the General Conference of UNESCO in Paris. Session of the UNESCO's General Conference being held in Paris, his Italian counterpart on the sidelines of the ministry. During the meeting, which took place on Wednesday, the 2 parties closed bilateral relations between the 2 countries and expressed their desire to promote bilateral cooperation and the exchange of experiences in the field of education and teaching through the establishment of a partnership and the launching of projects to develop pedagogical and professional skills. You're listening to Radio Algeria International. This is the English service. As today, World Freedom Day on November 9th each year commemorates the fall of the Berlin Wall. This historic event signifies the end of communism in Central and Eastern Europe. We asked about the impact of the fall of the Berlin Wall in the world then and now. California-based political analyst Hamoud Salhi told us.
This was a peaceful revolution as duped by the Germans and Europeans. It marked the unification of Germany that would usher a new era for Germany to become the most important power in Europe and the world. But in many respects, this date represented the end of the Cold War. The collapse of the war was presented as the triumph of the Western world values, led by what some labeled as the indispensable nation and the world sole power, that is the United States. But in retrospect, the US and the Western world missed a golden opportunity to use that day as the beginning of a new global order, one that would be rooted in justice and international law. Instead, the United States embarked in creating new enemies. So in the 1990s, it declared through NATO that it was then united, that is NATO forces and the Western world and the entire world, according to the United States, were united against Islam, or simply they refer to it as either Islamic terrorism to make the connection to the religion, or Islamist terrorism to take that label away from the religion. But never mind, Islam, regardless of how it was described, was seen as the enemy. Later on, the United States, which shifted focus to Russia and China. And today, what's happening in Palestine, what could also see that the United States and the Western world see Hamas, Iran, and other national resistance movements against Israel as their enemy.
We also asked Professor Hamoud Salhi how World Freedom Day could encourage freedom fighters and resistance movements to snatch their independence and end occupation like it is the case in Palestine and Western Sahara, he added.
From a symbolic perspective, and the way the transition to the unification of Germany can be seen as an incentive, but these are two different contexts. The German unification brought, at the time, Europe together with the intent of establishing a security system, one that would not allow foreign interventions. But as we have seen afterwards, the European could not handle, for example, the Serbian questions. They had to rely on the United States. So symbolism, yes, but in other areas, this day, however we interpret it, is more connected to the collapse of the Soviet Union, the end of the Cold War, more so than the freedom of the people. The Western Sahara and the Palestinians can use or have used the symbolism using the peaceful means to achieve their independence, can be seen as a way, a learning lesson of how to achieve results. But we have seen in both cases, whether the Western Sahara or Palestine, sometimes the context is different.
World Freedom Day celebration is to honor those who fought against oppressive regimes. It takes place at a time when Palestinians are resisting an apartheid regime and fighting for their basic human rights and for the creation of an independent Palestinian state. The day is an opportunity to put forward the urgent need to end the Israeli occupation and shed light on the immense lack of the Palestinians' human rights. Professor Hamoud Salhi again.
Well, I think the best thing to look at is the double standard, and this is not new. I mean, we've seen the Europeans and the Americans supporting the unification of Germany, rallying behind the people in the streets. But we've seen the opposite during the Palestinian case. We've seen it also in the Ukraine, where the Ukrainian crisis was projected and as a crime against humanity, and Putin was allegedly indicted for a crime against humanity. It took the International Court of Justice 3 weeks to come up with that ruling. In this case, we are a month after and nothing is happening. The genocide continues to be done against the Palestinians. So the context is very, very different. The idea is there, one just to hope that the Western countries of the United States lead by example. They follow their principles, and they preach, they do what they preach. But this is not new. I mean, the French colonized Algeria at a time when there were, its revolution was calling for liberty, fraternity, and equality. So it's typical in more ways than one. So I don't see that this day has a lot of meanings to the Palestinians today. One just perhaps would like to remind the United States and Israel to follow the international law. The Germans are fully aware of the significance of how this is important to them. They did rush to the street, they demonstrated, and they are supporting the Palestinians and celebrating their day with the Palestinian in mind. That is very, very, very important, and that should be noticed. Other than that, this day, the world freedom has yet to live up to its expectation.
Today, around the world, people's freedom is still threatened. Many seek to control entire populations. Tyrants threaten violence or manipulate their financial sectors. Whether through political, social, violent pressures, these dictators still exist. World Freedom Day or World Freedom Day recognizes the need to continue striving for freedom for everyone. Now here's a reminder of our top stories. The genocidal campaign carried out by the Israeli occupation against defenseless Palestinians is still continuing for the 34th consecutive day, in which 10,600 people, mainly children, have been massacred. Palestinian Foreign Affairs Minister Riyad al-Maliki has sent an urgent letter to the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, to address statements issued by the Israeli occupation to nuke the Gaza Strip. The Algerian National Committee for Solidarity with the Sahrawi people has lodged a complaint with the International Criminal Court against the Zionist regime for genocide and war crimes against the Palestinian people. Thank you so much for joining us for today. You can join us tomorrow, same time, same frequencies. Goodbye for now.